And so the next session that we have is Modern Mediterranean, a mix of culinary influences, with Chef Sayat Ozylimaz, who is also a CIA grad. He is, along with his wife Laura, the chef owner of Delita in San Francisco, and they also owned Noosh, and then met at the Culinary Institute, that's correct, and he's worked for Blue Hill, I should really just read, sorry, I apologize. Okay, this is where I'm gonna say, we're gonna start this over again. So anyway, he's been out and about. We're really excited about Delita. This is kind of a homecoming for us here at the CIA because Chef Sayat was the chef for our Grove restaurant and then some other things throughout the CIA in this area. And so it is a pleasure to welcome him back. I will say that we are going to accept questions for this through Slido, so ask him everything and anything, and we're going to have a conversation, and it's going to be a really wonderful demo. So I'm going to step aside, I'm going to drink some more coffee, and it's a pleasure to welcome Chef Sayat.
Good morning, everybody. Speaking about walnuts, I mean, that was an amazing breakfast. One of the things I recognize and I want to celebrate with you is like, this is not only the best put together food conference that, you know, I've attended a couple, not just this one, but not just that, but the food is not just consistent, but it keeps getting better. So I was really excited and surprised this morning, so thank you to the team that prepares it, and thank you for the organizers. I'm excited to be here. It is a homecoming, and I walked through the garden, and it's beautiful. I mean, there's so much inspiration that I feel, not just coming to Napa, seeing the sunrise over the misty hills and everything. I don't know how long your drive was, but at least hopefully you walked over from the river terrace in through the little path. But I mean, it's always, you know, for us chefs, it's always about recognizing what's around us to be able to channel that energy into the food, right? That's why I get so excited about our terroir here, where we are. The garden that they built, if you haven't had a chance to walk through it, please do, right? Welcome. My name is Sayat. I did work at some crazy restaurants in my past. I'm out of the Culinary Institute for about 10 years now, and I finally have a restaurant, right? That's how long it takes, and it's an independent restaurant. I think it's fair to say many of you are coming from institutional hospitality options, and I'm excited to share the innovation at the independent restaurant end with you. I was an engineer before, so I think a lot of process. When I started cooking, it was all about the romance of peeling artichokes one by one and, you know, celebrating the produce and everything. But now we're running an operation at a large independent scale. Have you heard of my restaurant before? Has anybody? So it is the hottest restaurant in San Francisco. I know many of you avoid San Francisco like the plague, but it is actually not the case, and we are happy actually that the tourist visits are down because we get to keep the city to ourselves. But it is beautiful. We have a view to the Golden Gate Bridge. We're in the middle of a national park. The restaurant is called Delida, which is incidentally my mother's name. My wife named the restaurant after my mom. And she's sitting here with us today, and I'm really excited that she's here, actually. I woke her up at 5:30, and we drove down together. We drove up together. But, so Delida also means dahlia, which is the San Francisco city flower. So this idea of terroir, contextualizing even Middle Eastern Mediterranean food in its place is what's really exciting for my cooking and my wife's cooking. Also, I'll take credit for this too. I mean, Jen was talking about, you know, the great pedigree. I did work at Blue Hill at Stone Barns, Le Bernardin, a couple other Michelin-starred restaurants. The last 10 years, except for the beautiful hiatus I took, in working in the restaurants at the Culinary Institute of America, I've been running my own business for the last 6, 8 years. So that included Noosh, a casual Mediterranean spot in San Francisco that was really hot too. But wonderful partnership. We got locked out of our restaurant, so we were in litigation for a couple years. But now we opened that hottest restaurant I was talking about, right? So roundabout journey, but I'm going to take credit for one thing. My wife is on Top Chef right now. If you're watching this season, any of you watching the season right now? Yes. I saw one hand. We're too busy. Good. Okay, she's famous now. I'll take credit for that too. So if you see my last name on TV, that's her. And she's kicking butt. It's really fun to see her on TV. So I know you've seen a lot of cabbage presentations, but I promise this is going to be the best one. For me, I brought up the engineering thing in the beginning. For me, it's always been about continuous improvement, right? You can't really design a food ecosystem, especially, and I'll just contextualize this always in the world of an independent restaurant, right? So I don't have as much scale as many of you guys do. So some things are easier for me and some things are harder. But I talk about a food ecosystem within a restaurant in the context of the menu, right? That defines my supply chain, but also my output, the waste. So when I think about, when we were designing the menu, and we've been lucky enough with Noosh as well as this restaurant, and even when I was here at the Grove, the menus have been a slam dunk. Like, we put so much effort into menu ideation and sort of putting the whole thing together in a cohesive way without trying too hard, right? Things need to be accessible, all of that stuff. Thank you. But we never knew how we would use the byproduct of all the menu items, right? You don't see it until it happens. So there is a secondary effort always after the menu has been put together that says, okay, you predict, right? You're going to have, if you're doing short rib kebabs, you're going to have short rib trim because the kebabs are going to be cubed, and you predict how, that's going to happen, but you don't know exactly how you're going to use it. So the dish that I'm preparing today basically uses byproduct from two main things that we already generate wonderful revenue from, but the byproducts had a brief period in our restaurant where they were going to waste. Simple concept, right? We were using the cabbage rolls, right? So Eastern European, but also Mediterranean. Dolmas. We stuff everything in the Middle East. It's a stuffing cuisine. We stuff peppers, we stuff mussels, we stuff squid, we stuff cabbage, we stuff grape leaves. So cabbage leaves, we created a dish, it looks gorgeous. We use only the outer leaves, so it's things that are a little bit darker. Then the inside basically was going to family meal. But there is another effort, right? So in the context of sustainability, one of the things I get excited about is using lactobacilli or any other fermentation method to create flavor, right? We talk about cooking, using heat, using wood, but that is a method of cooking that requires zero energy, right? So the bacteria are doing the work. They're converting ambient sugars into acid, keeping everybody else out, and creating a beautiful product. And it is part cooked by the time it comes out. So the outer leaves go to the dolma, the inside gets fermented. So you're not only utilizing product, but also creating value to the customer. You're not just putting a piece of cabbage, which is fine. A piece of cabbage is beautiful too. And not all of us have 3 weeks of time to let a cabbage ferment in the dungeon of our restaurant kitchens or institution kitchens. But in our case, we have a very busy restaurant and we run a chef's menu. So the chef's menu, I have a very large menu, about 12 entrees, 20 appetizers. So we're a destination restaurant. So it allows people to come and visit us more often because they can't survey the menu on one visit. But the menu also allows me to run a chef's tasting menu. But the chef's tasting menu is family style and it's rustic. So it allows me to express my culinary muscles in a very flexible way. So sometimes I'm running the fermented. When the fermented cabbage is ready, I'm putting that on the menu. When I have lamb chopped trim, I'm making lamb loin skewers, and then I'm putting that on the menu. So there's a lot of flexibility. That's, I mean, part of the menu design that works really well for me. The chef's choice, I can not only keep the menu very dynamic, give folks different reasons to come back to the restaurant, give value, right? Because it's not just using the byproduct. The customer needs to receive value as well. And at the end of the day, everybody benefits. The cooks are incredibly happy that there's the waste that we're putting out into the trash area keeps going down as our volume is going up. Actually, that's one of the ways we measure it. It's one of the things that I've been super insistent on is not increasing the count of trash bins, for the green trash bins that we put out, and it's actually worked. It disciplines us to find ways of using the product. But so this chef's menu gives me an outlet to express things that are byproducts in my giant menu. So we use the cabbage, we ferment it, but the lamb chops at my restaurant are a very specific process. There is a dish called sheftali kebab from Cyprus. I'm going to start rendering this because I think it'll take some time. Yes. So Cyprus is basically famous for wrapping their kebabs with coal fat. So we took this tradition, and you know, with our fine dining restaurant, it's still casual service. That's what San Francisco demands, by the way. You know, they want things that are unique, experiential, and fun, and playful, and new, and delicious, of course, and a good value too. But it is a relatively we don't have white tablecloths, for instance. So within this context, they're always exploring new things. So we have these lamb chops. It's basically a crepinette. Some of you might have heard the word crepinette before. It's any farce that's been wrapped with coal fat. So these would be basically skewered onto long skewers, cooked over coals, but wrapped with coal fat in nature in Cyprus. So, but we took that idea and basically put it around the lamb chop. But because the lamb chop is wrapped with a chunk of kebab meat and then coal fat, I can't keep any fat inside. So you know when you get the lamb racks, there's a big eye and a small eye, and then there's the fat cap, right? That's the extension of the ribs. So we take the lamb, the small eye of the lamb chop, and that gets skewered for the tasting menu for beautiful tenderloin kebabs. Delicious, people love it. And then we take the fat cap, there's just this little strip that hasn't been Frenched out, right? It's delicious when you cook the lamb chop that isn't wrapped with all those things that I was talking about. But we take that little strip and basically make a bacon out of it. And then it gives us perfect lardons or little cubes. So in this case, I'm using one byproduct with another byproduct to create a completely new dish, create value for the business, create value for the diner and the cooks as well. I mean, we always think about cooks as peons to move around, but in my world, because labor is so hard to build, manage, and hold on to. This is falling apart a little bit, but it's fine. Maybe we'll deglaze it. That wasn't part of the plan, but I might, if you have a vinegar or something, we might deglaze it a little bit. But because, so there are internal customers, right? So I'm not just doing this for the business, for the environment, but my internal customers. So they get really excited about this. How many of you frequently ferment things? And how many of those of you who've raised hands do it for your professional use? Okay, perfect. So meaning like we are very interested as chefs in fermenting, but it's a lot harder for us to do it in the professional context because of HACCP rules and things like that. And then also obviously it's not incredibly scalable unless you put it in a little hot sauce or something like that that you can actually diffuse into flavor for other things. Thank you. It's fine if we have a little bit of fun. Yeah. So the idea for I played around with my fermentation ratio a lot. Worked with Sandra Katz a little bit, if you know this name. You know, my favorite thing is basically that range between 2.5% brine to 5% brine. But I think what makes the most difference is the fermentation temperature. So we're lucky in the Presidio. This is a national park, by the way. It's all old military buildings. And we're lucky that our dungeons in the basement are super cool. It's at 65 degrees almost all year. So I get a beautiful product. So 3% is what I do. And it creates a crispy, beautiful ferment. We ferment all kinds of things like carrots, turnips, and obviously in this situation, cabbage. We ferment our own hot sauce, but then to stabilize it, we cook it. So there's all kinds of considerations there. So this is the lamb bacon. We rendered it. I'm just going to use the same pan, actually. Maybe we need another one because it's a little too much fond for me to char cabbage too. So the idea is this is 3% salt, basically. So 3% by weight. I have 3 liters of water. That's about 3,000 grams. And then I'm putting in 90 grams of salt. Math works a lot better with the metric system. I'm from Istanbul, by the way. I've been in the United States about half my lifetime. But that's like the one thing that I still adhere to, the metric system. Yeah, I'm 40 years old. 20 years here, 20 years in Istanbul. But I got a cake the other day. I'll go back to the Top Chef that's now famous. I got a cake that said, Top Chef's hubby. That's my title now. I'm very proud. So then this goes in, right? I know you've probably seen a fermentation demo before, but I just love how simple it can be as long as you are able to control your environment, right? So I think it's a lot about the setting that you're in. If your space allows it, I think it works really well to create wonders without using energy and not so much effort. Of course, there's going to be some loss here and there when you don't have the right bacteria in there, but it's well worth it. Oh, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. So that cabbage, I cited a 3-week time period, and that's, oh, thank you so much. You're so kind. Right move? She did, yes. Yes, I would not have thought about that. Yeah, but yes, so the cabbage has fermented, basically. I need to find some lamb fat. I drained it all. So we would use the lamb fat to do it. I'll just use, Chef Rebecca prepared some oil for me. I'll just use that. But we're basically going to char a cabbage that's been fermented and then dress it with all these little accoutrements that I have. But it's cuisine specific, right? I'm a lamb restaurant almost. I'm Eastern Mediterranean. I have 5 lamb dishes on the menu. And then yeah, the fermented cabbage is almost like a white kimchi, if you will. And then tahini and onions basically bring all of this towards, you know, something that you can actually pair with wine. It's fermented products more than vinegar pickles pair better with wine, as long as you don't have the off flavors. Because vinegar just gets in the way. And I think about like my moderating of Mediterranean or Middle Eastern flavors is always in the context of managing garlic and raw garlic and raw alliums, and taming the content of vinegar. So we use a lot more pomegranate molasses in my world than vinegar, for instance.
Chef, can I ask a question about fermentation? Can you hear me? Sorry. We're starting to hear or see fermentation across a lot of different food service menus. and it's a process that's been around forever. What do you attribute to that? And have you used
Why is it coming
fermentation
back?
in your other restaurants?
Yes. So I think one of the reasons we're seeing more of it is the interaction of health and food service is becoming, the touch points are increasing with social media and the proliferation of influencers. So a lot of folks, I mean, we've always seen food in the context of health, but I think that is actually increasing. So, but I do think chefs are just getting excited about that too. They're getting more educated. There's the lag effect. Like 10, 15 years ago, it was the hot topic. Now it's just trickling down. And when I was cooking at Blue Hill High and Mighty, I was always thinking, okay, this is the forefront of cuisine. All the innovation is happening here, and it trickles down. There's something to that, right? So you get excited about certain things that become fads and trends, and but it doesn't really permeate into things that are more accessible to the general public until a decade after. I think trends have a lifetime. As soon as it's published and plate and the menu, it takes really like a couple years for it to penetrate all these different channels.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Chef. I knew I could rely on you. So we'll probably put a little, I mean, the cabbage is not going to cook in our time here. I'm not really that ambitious, but imagine a cabbage that's been sitting in brine for 3 months. It's already got the moisture content. So as soon as you hit it with, yeah, we'll just wait a little bit until it cools down, and I'll pour a little bit of this glaze so the fond goes back in.
And we have a question from the audience.
There we go. Yes.
Andrew is asking, is it challenging adhering traditional Mediterranean flavors and culture to San Francisco's palates?
Very good question. I think, I'll give you the long answer. So about 9 years ago, we started a pop-up restaurant in San Francisco, 8 years ago. So pop-ups are still happening. I don't know where they happen, but somehow people find them. We were underground and sold like 3 months out, very successful. The point was, it was kind of like a lab environment for us, because we would actually cook for 30 people, my wife and I, and we would come out and tell them about the dishes, and at the end, we would be just shaking hands and kissing babies. I know almost every single diner from those pop-ups. They still come to our restaurant, and I know their kids, allergies. Like, it was a very intimate environment. So this allowed us to sort of understand our diner a little bit better. We had certain proclivities as far as what we thought Mediterranean food needed. And then by the time we were opening Dalida, like the newest restaurant, we knew exactly what needed to happen. So the raw garlic, right? It's something that we all love, but it's hard for the business diner, for instance, let's say, right? So it's not for everybody. So that's one thing that we've always, I know it's a very specific thing, but it's always hard to tame and leave out of recipes because you're craving it, right? You want it to be in there, but you can't always get it in there because the diner doesn't want it in there. So one of the things that we're lucky with is San Francisco is a very educated diner. They're very excited to try new things, and per capita spending is highest in the city of San Francisco on food, on hospitality. So that is a very lucky combination for a small independent restaurant that has a good following in the city. That's why finding the right balance of flavor has not been hard. Now, when you come to my restaurant, my mom was asking yesterday, so we have this arayas burger. So pitas get stuffed with a kebab farce, and the burger gets cooked in the pita, so all the juices go inside the bread, and it kind of deep fries the bread to a certain extent, and it's delicious. And she was saying, well, you have all these, San Franciscans eat this, very well-spiced burger, and yes, they really enjoy it. I think we didn't have to, I talk about taming the food, but it's really true to tradition. And the other thing to recognize is, when we eat at home, we're not really, in the Middle East, right? My family only had like 7 spice jars, probably. In Istanbul, especially, outside of those regions that are a little bit more passionate about specificity in food, and when you go to the big city, it's already a much calmer food dynamic. We don't want to eat very spicy food every day, in my world. It's not true for every culture, but it was true for my household as well as my home, as well as my city. Yes. But then there's also wine, right? Like, you can't really be too loud with your flavors and spices if you want to have a good wine program. Like Burgundy, I can't really yell at a Burgundy with my spices, otherwise it's just gonna walk away, right? It's just that simple, really. You have to really tame it down. So this is as simple as this dish is. This comes out of the cabbage. I've cooked it beautifully. I'm going to slice it. We do make it a little bit easier for the diner. I know this is sort of like an uncooked cabbage that we're putting on a plate for the sake of demo, but the idea is, in my world, always a little bit of value. And as soon as you take off the bacon from this, it's still a complete dish. Oh, yes. Yes, sure. Thank you. So this tahini dressed cabbage, in this current form with some crunchy seeds, was actually a dish that became a favorite at those pop-ups that I was referring to. But then the dish evolved over time, and we have, different expressions of the same dish. Of course. Yeah. It is a wedge salad, yes. And then, you really need a little bit of sweetness with the fermented stuff, things, I feel. So that's where the pomegranate molasses marmalade is coming in. So I'll make a comment about pomegranate molasses. I hope the pomegranate board is not here today, but they sometimes are at the CIA conferences. But no, there's nothing wrong with pomegranates. But what I'm actually probably going to advocate for is probably in their benefit too. But because the products that we get from the Middle East, that's my biggest challenge. If you were to ask what's the biggest challenge with Middle Eastern food, so California is basically all Mediterranean climate. And in the context of the farming culture, and I don't know if anybody can attest to this, but like the Fresno and the Central Valley and everything were built by Armenians that came from Turkey, actually, like many generations ago, at the turn of the last century. So, meaning like we already have eggplant, fennel, and all the different things that I'm accustomed to eating in the Middle East. So the point is the adaptation for Mediterranean food was not difficult in the context of the product that's available, but always from the perspective of the specific product that we can get from the Middle East. A lot of things get adulterated in my part of the world, and it's very difficult to find high quality, high-end, consistent product. Pomegranate molasses is the example. And the molasses that we get is basically added caramel. It's like in the old days, they exist, but we used to get a lot of balsamic vinegar that's reduced with caramel, right? So there's this like sugar presence. All the molasses that we get is that way. So that's why I often start with juice, actually. That's from California. and we use basically a pomegranate concentrate instead of pomegranate molasses. So just because it's a Middle Eastern product, this is probably one thing I'll leave you with from coming from a Middle Eastern chef talking to institutional chefs is, just because it's a Middle Eastern product doesn't mean it's a good product. If you have a better opinion, like when you taste the molasses from the bottle, the Sadaf bottles, for instance, like just know that it's okay to say this is not good. We always feel shy commenting on other cultures, but it's just, it's not good. It's just not something I would dress a salad with. If I'm barbecuing a piece of pork or, glazing a pomegranate molasses, perhaps. Glazing a lamb or something like that, perhaps. But otherwise, it's not really a finishing product, so to say. Actually, it's not too bad.
So we have one more question that is about proper nutrients without meat products. So in your vegetable forward, and I know on your website it says that diners have the option of having a fully vegetable-driven experience. Are you concerned about nutrients? And even across the menu with meat, is that something that you're seeing more from West Coast customers, but also are younger customers coming in and wanting that? Is there a consumer-driven part of that also?
Not at my restaurant. I think this is one of the things that I think I have to balance is like, we're telling so many stories at the restaurant, especially with this regional food. There's so much context to it, and we're trying to get the cultural foundation across. We're talking about the flavors that are completely foreign, but also still familiar in some ways. We're trying to build bridges to another culture. That's why I always hesitate to add layers of other stories and make other claims, because when I make too many claims, as the merchandiser in chief and the marketing guy in chief, I always find that if I put too many messages into my food, I find that I don't do service to all the messages. So I try to balance it out a little bit. So my food can't be authentic, sustainable, seasonal, and balanced in nutrition at the same time. Maybe it can. I mean, we have the aspiration, but I just don't want to make that claim to diners. The one thing that we did do, and I've talked about this I'm sure you've listened to all my talks, but I've talked about this in the past, but in that I really believe in unbundling menus, and I think that when you see the steak not be subsidized by the vegetable dishes on the menu, does that resonate when I say that? So, right, so you have a $20 salad and a $40 steak, but you're doing, you have your food cost on the steak at 35%, but the food cost on the salad is like 8%. So you're not really building a vegetable forward menu, right? So the unbundling in my world actually helps me at least give a fair shake to the vegetable diners, if that makes sense. So that's why the website says you can have a full-on vegetable forward experience if you choose to. So the unbundling also helps. Like I'm not putting the protein at the center of the plate and putting carrots around it, then you can order your carrots, you can order your cauliflower and asparagus and rice and just have a full meal, really. Like, and then obviously it makes operational streamlining a lot easier because the steak guy is not waiting for the carrot guy. So it's self-serving too, I recognize that. But the unbundling in my world has really helped me, and I think it's been a great, so composed dishes, right? That's what I'm talking about, unbundling. But if you really break it down to all the merchandising components, like it's really, you're selling a shampoo with a deodorant, right? Like really on the plate. So I am in the business of just selling shampoo or deodorant. And if you want more deodorant, by all means. That's basically the idea. Wow, I never made that analogy.
Well, let's thank Chef Sayat.
Thank you.
And Chef's mom as well for getting up very early and driving up from the Bay Area. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everybody. This has been such a phenomenal 3 days, and I'm just so glad you guys were all here to join us. I was blown away by all of our incredible chefs and presenters, and I'm really hoping you're all coming away with new inspiration to move your operations forward on your plant forward journey. I really just want to quickly reiterate Jennifer's thanks to the incredible strategic initiatives team who made this conference happen under really challenging and constantly changing circumstances. The team that puts these events on is some of the hardest working and most incredible humans I've ever gotten to know, and I'm just so grateful for all of them and to get to work with them. So please, just big round of applause for strategic initiatives team. I'm so grateful for them. Jennifer really put this together. This really is her brainchild, and I'm so glad to watch her curate this thing in a way that was so thoughtful and engaging. Our ops team really pulled it all together. Our sponsorship team, Jen Luna and Nikki Mounts, and then the kitchen team, of course, led by Chef Tony, who has been behind the scenes running things kind of I feel like it might be like Ratatouille. I think that there might be several mice helping her. It is, right? Rebecca knows, Rebecca will tell you. I think there's a lot of mice, and all of the mice that were helping. But the culinary team, I was telling Tony this morning that I really think that this is, I've been here about 2.5 years, and this is the best food I've ever had at a CIA conference. So one more round of applause for the kitchen team as well, please. And the mice. And thank you to Tom and everyone at Copia for making this also seamless. I'm so grateful to you guys for coming out, for taking time away from your lives and your businesses to be here, and to be here with open minds to talk about the scope of what's possible in a plant-forward world. I really appreciate, that you guys were willing to engage with this possible full scope of what's doable when we talk about plant forward. We really appreciate that. Like Jennifer said, we love feedback. Please send it our way. You've got a link in the app. If you loved it, tell your friends and colleagues. If you hated it, come find me privately. I'll be in the parking lot later if you want to fight. Thank you to the sponsors. None of this could have happened without you. And quick housekeeping stuff. Like Jennifer said, we'd love to see you at Worlds of Flavor, Menus of Change. Also, next year, there's going to be some small changes to this conference, so stay tuned for that. We'll be on email. We'll get in touch as soon as we have that all confirmed. So yeah, we'll have Menus of Change in Hyde Park in June. We've got Worlds of Flavor already lining up some of the best chefs in the world coming out for Worlds of Flavor, so definitely try and make it to that if you can. And with that, I guess we're heading to our next round of breakout sessions. So thank you so much for being here with us, and I'll see all of you at lunch at 11:45. Is that right? Something like that? I think 11:40, probably 11:40, after the breakout sessions. Yes, it's in the app. Thank you, guys.
Hi, my name is Josh Harnden, and we're here at 11 Madison Park. I'm going to be making a sunflower salad for you guys. So to start, I wanted to talk about the ingredient that's probably the most unique about the dish, is the actual sunflowers. So these are pretty general sunflower that you'll see growing around. There's a few different types. Some of them are super bitter and astringent. This variety is something that we grow at our farm that we find to be less bitter and less medicinal tasting. We try to utilize everything on the flower itself. What it actually looks like when we break it down is something like this. So we clean the whole flower, we clean the stamen from the center, we remove the petals, and we keep it in acidulated water. You really want to clean all the green off. It's super fibrous, and then you break it down just to the core. And then when it's cooked, you actually end up with a texture that's similar to artichokes. This is an example of some that are cooked. These have been cooked in a white wine and vegetable stock with a little bit of saffron. And that helps with the discoloring as well, because they start out pretty pale and pretty white. So if you add like a little bit of saffron, it gives it a nice kind of yellow golden color to them. The salad can be paired with some summer beans, some yellow wax beans, a little bit of green tomatoes that have been pickled, some sunflower seeds, a little bit of a mustard aioli, and then we try to do different varieties of the petals themselves. So we've baked some chips that are simply baked with a little bit of olive oil and salt in between silpats and roasted at 300 degrees in the oven. And then we have some that we fermented. We fermented them with a rice paste, a little bit of chili, a little bit of garlic and onion, similar to what you would do for a kimchi. And then we have some that are just fresh that have been washed and cleaned. To start building the salad, we use a rectangular mold. We're going to pipe in 4 dots of the garlic aioli that's spread out evenly within the mold. On top of that, we're going to place some of our summer bean salad that has epazote, a little bit of yuzu, a little bit of chili, and green beans folded into it. Now this is probably one of the most difficult parts of building the salad, is just getting it into the mold in an even layer. And something that we use to help with this process is that we take an offset spatula and we bend that back in an even layer. Just work from one end to the other until you have just even sides. You want to make sure that your salad is not too wet when you pack it into the mold. Otherwise, the juices are going to push out the sides and you're going to end up with something that you're not really happy with. Once you have that, you're going to remove the mold. Now we're just going to place some piles of pickled green tomatoes, just for a pop of acidity. These have been pickled in a white balsamic pickling liquid. After that, we're going to do some candied sunflower seeds. These have been cooked in a simple syrup. You let the sugar reduce down, you place them into a colander, and then you rinse off any of the excess sugar quickly, and then you fry it in an oil that's at about 350 degrees. From here, we're going to add some of our kimchied sunflower petals. They're pretty strong, so we don't really need to add too many. Just adds like a little bit of funk and a little bit of acid to the dish. And you want to spread these out evenly so you don't get too much in one bite. Then from here, we're going to start adding our sunflower petals. We're going to start at the top of the dish. We're going to do some thinly sliced yellow wax beans in between each layer. The sunflower chips we're going to add on last because they will go limp. And one by one, keep plating until you get to the base. And add one more bean just to finish it off, just so that the salad is fully covered. Now another fun part of this is we've taken the sunflower baragold, these pieces here, we've thinly sliced them and layered them out onto a piece of parchment. So it's naturally pretty sticky itself, so you can actually take that with your offset spatula and lift it up, and it should stay in one piece. If it does break apart, you can always fix it. If it sticks to the paper, you want to make sure you lift that first, and then you press it on just lightly. So now you can see it's kind of lifted up on one side, and you can just press it down just so slightly in the center. The chips that we made, and just tuck them under in between the rows. These are nice just to give it a little bit more texture, but they're also just adding a nice natural color to it. Then from here, we're just going to finish it with a little bit of a yuzu citrus vinaigrette, and we're just going to brush over the veil just because it does dry out a little bit. Then to finish, a little bit of fleur de sel. That's it. So here you have a summer bean salad with sunflowers, epazote, and yuzu.
Today, we're making these delicious roasted carrot tamales. I'll show you some plant-based techniques for bringing out the earthy and sweet flavor of the carrots. I was inspired to make these tamales from the corn tamales I tasted at Dirt Candy. We're going to make masa with carrot broth. Fill the tamales with roasted carrots and chiles, and serve the tamales with a carrot and habanero coulis. We'll start by making the roasted carrot filling. Here I have some heirloom carrots, poblano chiles, and white onion that I've roasted with olive oil, salt, and pepper. in a 425-degree Fahrenheit oven for 30 to 45 minutes until tender. Once the roasted vegetables have cooled, pulse them in a food processor to a coarse consistency. Adjust the seasoning to taste. Set this aside while we make our coulis. For our coulis, here are some orange carrots that I've washed, peeled, and cut into a medium dice. Remember to save all of your carrot peels because we're going to use them when we make our broth later. Into a saucepan, add our carrots, as well as some diced habanero chiles with the seeds and stems removed, and Mexican oregano. To add a deep umami flavor, add some prepared Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales. Bring this to a boil and allow to simmer until the carrots are very tender. Remove the vegetables from the broth. In a blender, puree the vegetables until smooth, using broth to adjust the consistency. Simmer the carrot peelings in some prepared Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales for 15 minutes to extract flavor. Strain, reserving the broth and discarding the peelings. Now let's make our masa dough. In a stand mixer, beat some vegetable shortening with a couple tablespoons of the carrot broth until fluffy. In another mixing bowl, combine masa harina, baking powder, and salt. Add the masa mixture to the shortening mixture and combine to form a soft dough. Add additional broth if you need to. You're looking for a dough with a soft paste-like texture. Cover the dough and set aside. And now we'll build the tamales. Here, I have some corn husks that have been soaked in warm water for 30 minutes so they're nice and pliable. Place the corn husk shiny side up and spread about 1/4 cup masa dough on the husk, about 1/4 inch thick. Place 1 to 2 tablespoons of carrot filling down the center of the dough. Roll up the tamales. Repeat until all corn husks are filled and rolled. Steam the tamales for 45 minutes to an hour. To check to see if the tamales are done, unroll one and see if the masa still sticks to the husk. If it does, cook for an additional 15 minutes. If it releases, it is cooked. Now we're ready to serve our tamales. Cover the bottom of the serving plate with a prepared hot coulis. Drizzle with crema. Remove a tamale from the husk and place in the center of the coulis. Top with microgreens. Made with Knorr Professional Caldo de Vegetales. This is a delicious and comforting vegetarian twist on traditional tamales that your customers will love.